Hello everybody, welcome to my commentary for my boss playthrough of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. So the footage you are going to see is the first time that I defeated each boss in Dark Souls 2. And throughout the video I will be either rambling about my current thoughts at the time, some of the lore behind the bosses, and strategies that I know of to defeat them. I would like to give a special shout out to such amazing YouTubers as Dave Control, Fatai Vidye, Fighting Cowboy, The Democracy, and Over the Gun. Their videos on the lore and strategies for defeating these bosses was definitely very helpful for me in conquering this game. So, with that said, let's begin. This here is the first proper boss you can fight in Dark Souls 2, and this is the Last Giant. So, the Last Giant isn't too difficult of a boss fight, and I feel it's a good balance for the start of the game. The trick is to lock onto his ankles and just get to town by sticking close to them. He does one attack where he sort of raises his foot to do a stomp, and as long as you've rolled out of the way, you should be able to dodge it with no difficulty. So, the lore of Dark Souls 2, the main story takes place in the land known as Drangleic. The King Vendrick of Drangleic was convinced by Queen Nashandra to invade the land of the giants across the sea, and from with it he took back something that allowed him to harness the power of the soul. He used this to create mechanized creations known as the golems. So the giants invaded, causing a large-scale war, which we will see later when I fight the Giant Lord. And this, the Last Giant, is actually that Giant Lord that you defeat long ago. So that's why he was awakening in rage, because he recognized that you were the one who defeated him. So, defeating the Last Giant will give you the Soldier's Key, and this will allow you to fight the Pursuer. Now, the Pursuer also appears many times throughout the game as a tough, non-responding enemy. But if you want his soul for crafting his greatsword, you'll need to defeat him here. If you get lucky with the timing or you parry him, you can hit him with the ballista. Unfortunately, at this time, I was not very good at parrying in Dark Souls 2, which is interesting because in Dark Souls 1, I became quite skilled at parrying. So, I believe that the Pursuers were tasked with hunting down undead and turning them completely hollow. This is why when his sword goes blue right there, it will cause you to be cursed. In a way, he's almost the Resident Evil 3 nemesis of the game. And I believe this was due to the fact that King Vendrick was frightened of the undead curse and sought desperately to find a solution, one of which was imprisoning hollows in the Lost Bastille, which we will get to later. So, I'm not sure if I was under-leveled at this point, because I did spend a lot of time soul grinding, but the Pursuer definitely puts up a good fight. But it is a fair challenge. I find the trick is to try to get him to either bait the cursing attack, as it has a long wind-up and a long cooldown, or his running attack, because it is easily dodgeable. The hardest attack he has is a spin attack. It seems to have a long range and also a bit of a delayed lock-on. But with a little bit of perseverance, you will be able to defeat him. So, if you defeat the Pursuer, you can unlock a shortcut to the Lost Bastille, but instead I decided to go to Hade's Tower of Flame to fight the Dragon Rider. Now, before I fought this boss the first time, I didn't realize he was fought so soon. I ended up running it with no Estus, and therefore I died. I also feel at this point in the game, I definitely overcomplicated the strategy of fighting him. You'll see that my dodging is not really good, and I should have definitely stuck closer to him. The Dragon Riders are meant to be the royal guard of King Vendrick. However, they don't really put up much of a fight if you know what you're doing. The trick, which I should have done, was to strafe on his left side rather than his right, as it's a lot easier to dodge underneath his attacks. One other thing that is interesting that I didn't realize at the time is that you pull a few levers earlier to raise the ground here, but if you don't do that, you can actually make him hilariously fall to his death. I unfortunately wasn't able to do that. So, further back to the Cathedral of Blue is the old Dragon Slayer, who is... he's Ornstein from Dark Souls 1 with an added AoE. So, I don't know exactly if it's the same Ornstein. I think he's meant to be a different one, or some reincarnation, perhaps. There is a large theme of cycles and a cyclical process throughout Dark Souls. And this just could be his iteration. Later on, when I talk about the 4 great souls that you need to obtain, in a way, each one is some sort of form of the Lord Souls you needed in Dark Souls 1 to open the Lord Vessel pathway to the kiln of the First Flame. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, but for some reason I was very poor at this fight. It's definitely not a good performance, which is weird because I played Dark Souls 1 a lot and helped a lot of people co-op Ornstein when he was with Smough. And I got very used to being able to dodge Ornstein. But I think perhaps it could be that I wasn't very well equipped. At the time I was using the Drangleic armor set you can get by dropping down after the Pursuer fight. And therefore it meant I didn't really have the weight capacity to be carrying a heavier shield or weapon. So, after you go to Hade's Tower of Flame, you can get the Faith, the merchant who sells miracles. I forget her name. But she will open the passage to the Huntsman's Copse, which will allow you to fight the Skeleton Lords. So, this was my first fight facing the Skeleton Lords on my profile, but before this I had just helped a few people co-op them. So I think I underestimated this fight, as you'll see, each time you defeat a Skeleton Lord, it will spawn a group of skeletons. And seeing as I destroyed 2 of them right away, it meant I was faced with quite the army, as you can see. I would also recommend destroying that last skeleton first, as he can shoot fire attacks. So, from what I understand, the Skeleton Lords were under the order of the old Iron King, and they were supposed to lead a hunt against all those who had been cursed with the dark sign. And I guess that would have made them sort of in league with the Executioner's Chariot, who is the next boss that we will talk about. So, once you have defeated the main main skeleton lords, the trick is basically just to get a few hits on the skeletons and then back off. Honestly, I think my biggest enemy in this fight was the lock-on camera. I had been used to locking onto every enemy and never fighting without being locked on, but I definitely think that puts you at a disadvantage. You'll see I try to go for these wheel skeletons, but at first I kept getting locked onto the skeletons behind me. I don't really have too much else to say about this boss, but if you can get someone to co-op with you, I would definitely recommend that, as it helps with reducing crowd control. The weapon I'm using is the Flame Longsword. This can be found in the Forest of Fallen Giants, in a tunnel that's guarded by a flaming lizard. It's definitely very helpful at the start since it has a decent amount of scaling, but the flame damage makes it a little bit more powerful. And I also like that it can be swung very fast. So this next boss is the Executioner's Chariot. You'll see that I didn't bother killing all of the Dark Wraiths leading up to it. There is also a Red Phantom that does not respawn, which camps outside the door, and he was very difficult. I'm almost a little disappointed I didn't leave any footage of that in. So the trick for the Executioner's Chariot is you'll need to defeat 2 necromancers so these skeletons stop respawning. One thing I use to my advantage is to get the chariot to run over the skeletons, thus weakening them. You can use these little alcoves to hide from the chariot, but if you're very good with timing, you can actually roll underneath the sides. So from what I understand, the Executioner's Chariot, he has control over this area of the undead purgatory, and he basically just spends the entire time running over these undead as a form of endless torment and agony. It's a very lovely image. And there's the second necromancer down. My problem, I think, with this boss is that initially I tried to rush it. But I definitely recommend taking your time to deal with all of the skeletons and the necromancers carefully. Once you do that, you will need to flip the switch on this gate, causing the chariot to crash. So, once the chariot is down, you only have to deal with the horse. The biggest thing to watch out for is his front charge attack, where he has a very delayed lock-on. The best, your best chance is to get him to use that dark attack, as it has a long delay, and it gives you a good chance to attack. This is definitely one of my more favorite boss fights in the game, as it's a very entertaining experience. Just the thing to watch out for, you'll see here is front charge. He is really good at waiting to charge and still lock onto you. I think that may be a bit of a problem, though, with Dark Souls 2 overall. I feel that the tracking for a lot of the enemies and bosses is a little too perfect. For example, there are fire lizards that I talked about earlier. They can pretty much spin like a top, 360 degrees, full speed, and lock on perfectly. There's one time where I was literally sprinting around in circles, and he was waiting until he had locked on to use his fire attack. It's something I think that was a lot better in Dark Souls 1 and more fair. So after this, I then progressed to the Lost Bastille via the shortcut unlocked from the Pursuer, and this will lead you to the Ruined Sentinels. For this, I also used the 2 NPC summons, as my first attempt with the boss did not go so well solo. So, the trick to the Sentinels fight is that The other two do not enter the fight until the first one is defeated. You'll see that they just simply wait there, and even when I dropped down, they still did not attack. I would also recommend getting used to fighting these, as you do encounter them as a respawning enemy later in Drangleic Castle. If you are soloing this boss, then the best thing is to not drop down from this platform, because after you defeat the first Ruined Sentinel, one will typically get onto this platform a lot faster than the other one, giving you time to inflict a lot of damage. I also gloriously failed at trying to do that jump attack. But like most humanoid enemies in Dark Souls 2, they have a very straightforward moveset, and they shouldn't be too difficult to dodge. Now, I believe the Ruined Sentinels were meant to be some of the main guard of the Lost Bastille. The whole point of this area was to imprison undead and lock them away forever. Seeing as they couldn't die, the best thing to do was to leave them in prison. One thing I definitely would do differently the next time I go through this fight is my use of a shield. In Dark Souls 1, I was very much a sword and board player. I would use the heaviest armor set, the most resistant shield, and then a very heavy weapon. So Havel's set or the Black Iron Tarkus set. But at a certain point in the game, I found it was much more prudent and efficient to two-hand my weapon and use the Blossom Kite shield on my back, which increases stamina regeneration. I also recently played back through a bit of Dark Souls 1 with this strategy, and it actually worked very well in that too. But until we get to that point in the game, I will still try and use a shield to block and resist all attacks. The other thing to point out is that there are many illusionary walls in this room. I didn't know at the time that you had to press action to open an illusionary wall rather than attacking it. So, after we go through Sinner's Rise, we will get to the Lost Sinner, who is one of the 4 possessors of a great soul. So, it's interesting because she apparently has punished herself due to her sins. It's a very scary thought. There's also a theory that she could be the reincarnation of the Witch of Izalith because she drops the old witch's soul on New Game Plus 2, I believe. The other important thing to note is that you can light up this area using your torch by going to the sides of the arena before you enter, and this helps with visibility, and it also allows you to lock on from a further distance. I think the biggest challenge to the Lost Sinner is that she's able to move very fast. You'll see that there are many times where, like that, just before I can get a hit in, she's able to jump away. But if you summon Lucatiel, she's able to tank a lot of damage for you, so it should be doable. The other thing that many people have pointed out is that she has a chaos bug at her eye, which looks like the same one that you destroyed in the Bed of Chaos, which adds to the link between them. I would also like to point out, if you hear any typing or clicking sounds, that's because I am doing a little online research on such great websites as Souls Lore to help me out with the lore of the fights. Another thing to watch out for is that in New Game Plus there will be 2 pyromancers in this arena. So next was one of the bosses I was looking forward to the least, but yet had some of the most fun with. And that is the Belfry Gargoyles. So these gargoyles guard the bell in the tower, much like the Bellkeeper's Covenant does. They are pretty much identical to the bell gargoyles from Dark Souls 1, only there are 5 of them now. Not very much more than that. The strategy that I found was I was very strict about only damaging one gargoyle, because the more damage they take overall, the more gargoyles that are summoned. You'll see that a 3rd one just spawned in. For this fight I also used life gems instead of Estus, because I wanted my health to be consistently recharging rather than just one, and I had more life gems than I had Estus flasks. One attack to watch out for is the delayed jump attack of the gargoyles. They will fly up in the air, land, and then attack, and it will usually be from an angle opposite to the way you're facing. And I got hit by this attack many times. Like that. I think eventually I figured out what was going on. My other main recommendation for this fight is don't be greedy. I only went in for an attack if I was either in the process of healing or had already healed. And again, the trick, only focus on one gargoyle at once. I don't know if it's possible, but theoretically, if you damaged each one enough, you might have to end up facing all 5 at once. But I think this fight definitely exemplifies why Dark Souls 2 is inferior to Dark Souls 1, because too many of the bosses rely on the illusion of difficulty rather than actual difficulty. For example, this boss is a reskin from Dark Souls 1, and in Dark Souls 1, fighting 2 bell gargoyles could definitely be difficult. If you summoned Solaire, it was made easier, but it was a fair challenge. You fight one gargoyle, halfway through, another one shows up. And that one, I felt, at least in my playthroughs, had more of a tendency to use the flamethrower attack. But in this fight, it's simply a bunch of gargoyles at once, and I don't even know if it's possible to summon health for this one. I read that there was a shade in the bell tower area you could summon, but for some reason his summon sign didn't appear. Oh yes, this was one of my most intense parts. I got trapped in this corner and barely managed to make it out. I thought for sure I was dead. I don't know how I survived that. But back to these summons, right? I don't know if it's possible to summon players because the area you have to go through is a PvP covenant, similar to the Darkroot Forest in Dark Souls 1. I did get lucky, though, with the invasions. I only got invaded by one player, and although he did defeat me, I was able to open the gate. Therefore, I didn't have to bother ringing the bell another time. Still, despite the fact that I should hate everything about this fight, I can't deny that I did enjoy myself, and I was very proud of defeating it on my second try. Now, I guess at this point I was following my strict habit, but it doesn't necessarily matter because all the gargoyles at this point have spawned in. So if you get it down to just 2 gargoyles, you can feel free to attack them however you like. I perhaps did this out of principle. And one other mind is that you will fight one of these gargoyles later as a respawning enemy in Drangleic Castle, as you do with most bosses from the beginning of the game. I should be defeating them any minute, hopefully. Not sure. It's the irony of having a really long boss fight with not much to say. This is one boss it would be interesting to see how well my two-handed rolling strategy would work. And here we go, the major celebration. Another thing to watch out for is that right after this boss there is a bonfire, but if you go down the ladder there are about 7 dogs and an NPC invader. I almost lost to that. So, after fully going through the Lost Bastille, I went back to Norman's Wharf to fight the Flexile Sentry. So, this is the other way you can get to Lost Bastille, as after you defeat the Sentry, you will ride his pirate ship. So, from what I know, the Flexile Sentry is supposed to be the tormentor of undead who will use his ship to dock at No Man's Wharf and transport the undead to the Lost Bastille. Now, I definitely got overconfident in this fight because I had fought the mini-boss Flexile Sentry right before the Lost Sinner, and I don't know if it's just this boss, but there's this attack right here, where he will grab you through your shield and hit you a lot. I also didn't have a lot of Estus. You'll see here that even though I was blocking, that attack still went through. So it definitely is something to watch for, that special attack. I think if I hadn't healed there, I would have died. I think the problem at this point is I was also starting to noticing that single-handing a heavier weapon, I'm using the Drangleic sword right here, is not effective because I was swinging too slow, using too much stamina, and then not being able to dodge. And this was a definitely risky maneuver, and I'm glad it paid off. I probably should have healed there instead. So, after this, I decided to go through the shaded woods. There's only one path you can go to at first, and that is this path that leads to Scorpioness Najka. I apologize in advance if I totally butcher some of these names. So, as many have pointed out, she is a discount Quelaag, as she is a naked woman on the her top half on the bottom half of some crawling creature. For this fight, you can summon Man-Scorpion Tark, who you will find in a secluded area of the shaded woods. You will need a special ring to talk to him. You can buy it from the cat in Majula, Sweet Shalancor, I believe is her name. If you talk with him, then he will aid you in your fight. You're also supposed to talk to him after defeating the Dukes to your Freya, which I actually have not done yet in my playthrough. I don't know too much about Najka lore-wise, but at least here on the website saying that her master and Tark's master may have been Seath the Scaleless, and that would make sense considering that the Duke's Dear Freya is believed to be the reincarnation of Seath, based on the special soul that she drops in New Game Plus. And she is also a magic user. The soul arrow is definitely something to watch out for. You'll see that I unfortunately dodged a little too early and got punished for it. But with Man-Scorpion Tark's help, this fight shouldn't be too difficult. So, going forward from there, I went into the Door of Pharos, where I fought one of my least favorite bosses in the series, the Royal Rat Authority. Those rats right there are the reason that the Royal Rat Authority sucks. As you'll see, if you get toxic, your health will drain very rapidly, and I managed to get lucky with a few very quick Estus uses. So, for this boss, I definitely recommend charging those rats. That charge attack is my biggest problem with the Rat Authority. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I was barely able to dodge it. He likes to jump back a far distance, like this, and then use this head swipe, which you can't block with a shield, and I couldn't seem to dodge under it. Also, going back to the Dark Souls 2 tracking, you'll see he's very good at waiting for the last possible second to charge. I guess that's how you're supposed to do it right there, but it wasn't something I was good at. I didn't bother reclaiming my souls because I thought that during this fight where I actually beat him I was going to lose, and there aren't too many souls there, I think only a few hundred. I wasn't too concerned. Pretty much all that this fight is a way to prove yourself to the Rat King, after which you can join the Rat Covenant. I joined it for a little bit, and it was enjoying, but I didn't get as many people summoned in as I thought I would. Which is unfortunate, because it definitely was an easy way to make souls. You simply lure people into a designated spot every time, and you gank them with 2 powerful mastodons, a rat, and a bunch of other enemies, plus traps. Man, it's hard to pick a least favorite boss, but this one's up there. It's just not interesting, and adding those rats is a very, very lame move on the developer's part. Thankfully, the area is optional. So, going forward, you will enter Brightstone Cove, Saldera. I'm not sure how you say that. And you fight Prowling Mages in Congregation, which is a boss that is simply a room of enemies. Now, my biggest problem in this fight was just simply watching my stamina. And the trick is to use these benches as a way to block these spells and attacks. If you can do that, you'll see that the mages and the congregation to go down quite easily. Your biggest enemy is either getting surrounded, cornered, or running out of stamina. There is some interesting lore to this fight. The idea is that this mining colony of Saldera was invaded by the pet spider of the Duke, and all of these spiders, because this Duke was apparently obsessed with them. And basically this is meant to be like a healing clinic for the sick in there. But at the same time, it is almost like a religious cult trying to indoctrinate the lesser undead, so they're also pretty evil as it is. An interesting lore, but definitely not worthy of the title of a boss. So I didn't go forward to fight the Duke's Due Fray yet, so instead I went to fight the Covetous Demon. Just before I went in, I was invaded, and I tried fighting the invader, but it wasn't going very well because they had many magic attacks. So I decided to basically say screw it and run through the fog wall. Discount Jabba the Hutt, you'll see here, is one of the easiest bosses in the game. His attacks do hit hard, but he has an incredibly slow wind-up time, so it shouldn't be any challenge dodging them. That attack right there is the main one you need to watch out for. If he swallows you, he will de-equip all of your armor and weapons. So, there's a really, really interesting story behind this covetous demon, that he used to be a normal person, and he had just an insane amount of love for Mytha, the Baneful Queen, who we will see next. And apparently his way to impress her was to eat a lot and just basically gorge himself until he became this really fat, disgusting demon. I wouldn't consider myself a ladies' man or a player, but that does not seem like a good solution in my mind. He also does reappear in the Crown of the Ivory King DLC. I'm not exactly sure why that one would be there. Reasons. So this next fight is Mytha, the Baneful Queen, and I had 2 NPC summons for this, and this fight was incredibly easy. She doesn't do too much damage. Her attacks are easy to dodge. The most important thing you need to do is, after the second bonfire in Middle Earthen Peak, you can go near the main fan of the windmill, and you can use your torch to burn down the fan, so that this drains a lot of the poison from this room. It makes it a lot easier to fight, and you'll see my biggest enemy here was weapon degradation, which unfortunately is very easy to do. Mytha was apparently meant to be wed to a prince of a castle, perhaps Iron Keep, but eventually she became Discount Medusa. So, the Smelter Demon, this boss, I love that it's challenging, and I've died many times, but I still love it. So, the Smelter Demon, where do I start? Okay, first of all, strategy. This was the first boss you'll see that I decided to start two-handing and dodging, mainly because this buff he adds here causes his sword to inflict fire damage. So he has 2 buffs throughout the fight, and his second buff, you'll see, causes you to take fire damage if you are near her, and the sword buff, again, makes it so he deals fire damage as well, which means blocking with the shield isn't enough. The strategy is to basically try and memorize his delayed attacks. You also need to watch out for that jump attack, as it has a very delayed AoE, so don't get in close. Another big challenge with the fight is that there is a very long run-up to it with many, many alone knights. I actually had to do the run-up so many times that I had caused all of the alone knights to despawn. Despite the fact that it's a tough fight, it's definitely fun. And it's fair. He's a very well-designed and very cool boss. His magic counterpart, on the other hand, is not. And we will get to that much, much later. So, once you progress through the Iron Keep, you will get to the Old Iron King, who is basically the Balrog and Bowser. So, the good thing about the Old Iron King is he has very long wind-ups, making his attacks relatively easy to dodge, unless you do something like that. And since he has such late wind-ups, it means there's a very good chance to get a lot of damage in on him. I decided to start using the Pursuer's Ultra Greatsword. It's definitely one of my favorite weapons in the game because it does a lot of damage. When he does this flame attack, you're able to roll through if you're very careful with the timing. The other thing I guess I've noticed from rewatching my footage is that the Old Iron King, his tracking is definitely more realistic. he's not able to home in on you at the very last second, where he telegraphs the attack, it will go, which is more fair. If you have a long sword, you can actually hit his horn right there. I realized this later. So the idea is that the old Iron King had this great castle, and it all sunk into the lava, and then he got transformed into a demon. I'm honestly not sure what I can say because in the time that this video ends, because there's so much, but I guess I'll eventually get to that later when we get to the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC. I had a lot of fun co-oping people with this boss. It's definitely a good area to get summons. So, after this, I went down through the pit in Majula to the Grave of Saints. So this is the Royal Rat Vanguard boss fight. Another contender for least favorite boss. So basically, it's a room full of rat enemies, and after you kill 10 of them, you'll see in the top that a larger one with a mohawk jumps down. The only difference is he does toxic damage as well. You'll see that I did actually die once in this fight, and that is because I originally went in with my large club rather than my sword, which was not very effective for swinging fast. And then I got cornered by the rats and got toxic. You'll see that this rat is incredibly weak. This barely qualifies as a boss fight, and this is simply the counterpart to the Door of Pharaohs, so that you can have another way to join the Rat King Covenant. The less said about this fight, the better. So, after you get through Discount Blighttown, the Gutter, and Black Gulch, the Poison Nightmare, you will fight the Rotten, and this boss is disgusting. I apologize for those watching. This is not a relaxing image at all. So, the Rotten isn't too difficult of a fight. His attacks hit very, very hard. But like the old Iron King, they are heavily telegraphed and are quite easy to dodge. One important thing, basically, is to watch your footing. These pools of fire you see around the oil, that will really, really drain your health if you fall into them. So, the theory is that the Rotten is the reincarnation of Gravelord Nito, because he's sort of a dead lord. But there is also a lot of speculation about how he is related to the Sunken King, because just beyond the gutter is the entrance to Shulva, the Sanctum City. Or, sorry, did I say that right? I need to fact check myself now. Shulva is the name of the city. Close enough. Yeah, you'll see I was actually able to cut off his arm. That's very disgusting. If you do get thrown into the fire, thankfully you're invincible until you stand up. I do enjoy this fight, even if it is pretty straightforward, and he is gross. I know. It's a creative fight. I like that. And this will net you another great soul. So with that, there was only one more great soul for me to get, and that was from the DS2 Freya. Now, I don't necessarily know how difficult this fight is because there are 3 NPC summons, and I think it really confused the boss's AI. You'll see what I mean. I also apologize to the arachnophobic who are watching this. This might not be relaxing. So, the reason we need to go here is because this spider killed that ancient dragon, and that is the soul we get, actually. The great soul, not the soul of the spider. But it is a mean spider, so we need to kill it. So, Freya, am I allowed to call it just Freya? I'm not sure. But she's surrounded by these mini spiders, and it's definitely recommended to take them all out first, as you can only actually damage her by hitting her directly on either of her faces. So the best thing to do is to bait an attack from one side and then go hit the other. However, you'll see what I meant earlier is that maybe because I had so many summons, she got confused, as she pretty much spent her whole time just sitting in place and barely moving around. Honestly, my biggest enemy in this was not locking onto her head to make sure I was directly hitting her. I do find the lore behind this whole story very fascinating. It's that was one thing I liked about this area, was that the lore pretty much spoke for itself. There's these workers which are mining away in the fields, they're mind controlled, there's being guarded by other workers, and the spiders are controlling them all. And at the heart of it is the Duke's dear Freya, and he loves spiders because he's a really sick guy. And he uses this to control the people. You'll have to watch out as she almost dies, as she does spit a lot of poison or acid there. So maybe I'll try this fight solo next time to see how truly difficult it is, but maybe not. So the important thing is that you do need to go over to the dragon and pick up this great soul, otherwise it won't count. So once you have all 4 of the souls, you can now progress through the Shrine of Winter. Or you could get 1000 soul memory, which I easily reached before I even had 2 souls. The first boss you'll fight in Dragonlake Castle is the Twin Dragon Riders, which, again, like the Belfry Gargoyles, is some really lazy boss design. So, at this point, I had already practiced a lot more on the Dragon Riders, and I understood the strategy a lot better. I know there might be a specific way to try and bait the other one into luring the archer down like he just did, but I honestly found it easier to just tank the damage of the arrows. Since they have the same moveset, it's quite easy to bait them into attack and separate them. It can be risky to be a little greedy, but I just decided to go for it. I hadn't used my flame longsword in a while, but I decided to use it because the quick attacking is better for gank fights. There's not much to say, they're just more servants of Vendrick doing a really terrible job at trying to stop me from proceeding. So further through Dragonlake Castle, you'll fight the Looking Glass Knight, and in keeping with my tradition of being hit by the first attack, there you go. So the Looking Glass Knight, one thing that makes him challenging is that you can't actually attack him through his shield. I noticed with other bosses like the Pursuer and the Dragon Riders that even if you hit their shield, you still do damage. It's only if it's raised that it counts, but this doesn't apply to the Looking Glass Knight. other thing, the biggest danger of this fight is that when he is on low health, he will slam down his shield and summon a helper. If there are other players nearby that have put their summon signs down, then that player will get summoned to fight against you. Now, thankfully, I got really lucky, as you'll see later. He only summoned an NPC that one of my fellow NPCs was able to easily destroy. But it's definitely a concern to watch out for. I pity the player who has to fight another player. You'll see right there. The other thing also is that he definitely has a tough health pool, but I think that could be due to the fact that I had 2 NPCs. I know that if you have more, the boss, his health is increased. The other, I guess, sort of issue I have with Dark Souls 2 that many people have pointed out, including Yahtzee of Zero Punctuation, is that too many of the bosses are humanoid guys in armor, regular knights, like the Dragon Riders, the Pursuer, the Looking Glass Knight, Velstadt, the Fume Knight, Sirlon, the Burnt Ivory King, the Gank Squad, the Old Dragon Slayer, the Rune Sentinels. I could go on. I don't know, it's just they're all a little too similar in movesets. It makes it difficult to talk strategies when I can sort of simply apply to all of them. But at least there's a nice shot to end that clip. So, next area is the Shrine of Amana, where we will come across this disgusting singing creature, the Demon of Song. Most people hate the Shrine of Amana because you get attacked with ranged spellcasters, and it's hard to see the floor to know where there's a large drop-off in the water, but I actually really enjoyed it. Like Brightstone Cove, the lore speaks for itself. I never really felt I had to look up something to understand it. I felt that I got it pretty well. The idea is that this demon, he's held within the shrine, but he sings the same song as the Milfinito, who are these chosen maidens meant to sing for the undead aberrations. So when they sing, it causes a bunch of fireflies to come out, and this keeps the aberrations at bay. As long as there's that singing, they won't attack you or be hostile unless you light a torch. But there's this demon which sings the corrupted song, so you need to take him out. If you do save all the Milfinito, you get a few gifts from them, like a divine blessing. The other thing that also is important is after this fight, you'll find a locked door that you can only go through if you are undead. If you are hollow. This will lead you to a shrine with another Milfinito, and if you pray at this shrine and you have no human effigies, it will turn you human. I never had any issue with running out of human effigies, thankfully, but I'm very glad that that feature is in the game. I had heard that the supply of effigies was either limited or very hard to come by, and I was not looking forward to potentially being cursed and not able to summon anybody to help me. This boss is definitely a lot more intimidating than it actually is. You can only damage it when its face is exposed, but the trick is to simply bait an attack, step back, and then quickly do a running attack before you put the skin down again. I guess the only attack you need to watch out for is that dark water blast, whatever it is. If you hear any sort of liquid sounds, I'm just enjoying some very delicious tea at this time. It's a decaf vanilla chai. This tea is always good for the soul, especially when you are being absolutely destroyed by some very difficult bosses. I don't necessarily know if the demon is weak to fire because it's a water type. I went with this flame longsword because unlike the Black Knight sword I was using, it swings faster and then uses less stamina. It's definitely something I think I'll use more of in Dark Souls 3. What I've played of that, it definitely seems to be the emphasis is on swinging fast rather than doing a lot of damage. Also, defeating the demon will give you the key to the embedded. You can use this to free a Milfinito to this trapped very high up in Drangleic Castle. So after you're through the shrine, you can enter the Undead Crypt, and here you will find Velstadt, the Royal Aegis, who is the last protector of King Vendrick. Now, I did die once to Velstadt, and basically his moveset is incredibly similar to those really large Hyde Knights you fight in Hades Tower. Hate Knights in Hades Tower of Flame. The problem is that he hits incredibly hard, and if you don't dodge perfectly, you can be heavily punished, especially when he buffs himself like he's doing right now. The trick, like most of the humanoid enemies, is to get the dodge timing down. Graveward Agdeni definitely helps a lot. Again, my problem there was being too greedy with the stamina. I do like the lore and design of this area, though, that Velstadt was the last knight of Vendrick to help defend him as he went completely hollow and roams around. Velstadt was also a sworn enemy of Rame, who used to be the other main knight of Vendrick, but apparently became a traitor. And Rame we will see later in the Crown of the Iron King DLC. So, after you defeat Velstadt, you have access to the King's Ring. And you will need the King's Ring to go through a locked door in the Forest of Giants, so that you can access the Giant's memory. Before you can do that, you need it to unlock Aldia's Keep, so you can get to the Ancient Dragon. Now, I noticed that there was this other locked door in Drangleic Castle, right by the King's Gate bonfire, and I went through it and found the Throne of Want, and I decided to go forward, and I saw that there was a fog gate, but I thought, well, it's not the end game yet, I still have much to do, I can't go through here. And also there were no summon signs available. And I walked through and was greeted by the Throne Watcher and Throne Defender. I instantly panicked because I actually didn't have my proper equipment set up. You'll see I just have the target shield because I was practicing parrying a little bit, since that shield makes parrying easier. But I decided that I would at least attempt this boss, and if I died, then I would simply run in and homeward bone out of there with the souls, and even then I didn't have that many, as you'll see. So, this fight is a bit of a closer attempt at capturing the feel of Ornstein and Smough, as there are two different enemies that gank you at the same time. I would argue that this is not nearly as difficult, because you'll see that the Watcher and Defender are actually quite passive in attacking. They will charge and attack you. I think there you'll see the only thing that saved me was that I healed. But Ornstein and Smough, they were always relentless. They never took breathers. These guys, you'll see, they'll take the time walking to you, defenses only temporarily once it's deactivated. Then they'll be more passive. You'll see here I was fed up at the Throne Watcher constantly blocking. I tried using some throwing knives, but that didn't work because you'll see she kept on dodging my attacks and nearly killed me. I have no idea how I survived this fight. I ran out of Estus and had to use life gems. There's not much I have to say about the boss's lore. They're basically just guarding over the Throne of Want, which you can see over there. The idea is that Nashandra, she's too weak to take the throne herself, so she's basically using you to gain access to the throne. That's why she says, "Brave undead, you've proven yourself to me." Or I guess it's just an excuse for Nashandra being a very, very easy boss, despite being the technical end boss. I've also heard that one of the bosses will actually get up after a few seconds, but as you'll see, I didn't have to deal with that problem. So, this is the Guardian Dragon, who was quite a pushover, because you fight a dragon exactly like this outside the Cathedral Blue in the Scholar of the First Sin version, and that dragon fight was more tougher because to get close to him you had to bait him to move, and then getting close, and even then your arena was very limited. But the trick to the Guardian Dragon is to just stay close to his foot, and he'll spam this stomp attack, which is very easy to dodge, and you can do a lot of damage. And honestly, I found going through all these keep a lot more challenging than this boss. Though, if you do happen to die to it, the run-up to it will be very difficult, as there are many of those really annoying giant ogres that I just absolutely despise. They stun lock you, they do too much damage, and they can grab you and one-shot you, even when I had all my vitality upgraded. As long as you can dodge that flame attack, you'll see that he goes down quite easily, and is one last barrier to one of the best and coolest looking areas in the game. Praise the sun. Well, praise the sun in a moment. There we go. Praise the sun. So, you go through the Dragon Shrine, and you will get the Ashen Mist Heart from the Ancient Dragon, who was a creation of Aldia. This allows you to go inside the memories of the giant corpses you see in Forest of Fallen Giants. If you go through the one that you have to use the King's Ring for, you will fight the Giant Lord. His moveset is pretty much identical to the last giant. It's just he has a sword. So, as I mentioned earlier, apparently the theory is that this giant is the last giant that you fight earlier. He just, I guess, wasn't fully dead. To quote the Princess Bride, he was mostly dead. Hopefully there are some fans of the Princess Bride watching this video, but that's besides the point. Okay. My strategy for this boss is identical to the strategy for the last giant. Stick close to the ankles, get him to use that stomp attack, and then punish. Other thing, I don't know if it would matter, but I made sure that all of the other giants and enemies in the area were dead before getting close to him. I don't know if they will attack you during this fight. So, defeating him will give you the giant's kinship, and this will allow you to access the throne fully. But before we did that, there was a major challenge I had to do, and that is the Ancient Dragon. Oh, when I I'm so glad that I was able to defeat this boss with not too many attempts. I think this might have been like my third or fourth attempt. I tried it with NPC summons, but that didn't work out because the dragon was stronger. You'll see that he has a ridiculously high health pool. And there's also that really devastating flame attack. The trick to that is to try and run towards his tail, but even then that doesn't work all the time. And you also need to watch out when he drops down. If you're directly behind him, you'll take a lot of damage. So, I believe that Alia created this ancient dragon as an attempt to help understand the undead curse, because this ancient dragon is meant to be like the ones from Dark Souls 1 that were defeated by Gwyn, and that definitely explains why he is such a very, very tough boss. I mean, after all, if it took gods, lightning bolts, and another dragon to take them down, like, what chance do you have? That was kind of a fail there. I don't know why I got hit. It didn't look like the fire was there at all. Basically, I guess the trick is to sort of bait that attack, run away, and punish. The dragon is a little bit weaker to lightning. I've heard there's some strategies where you can bait another attack from him, but basically I found it just kind of effective to just tank the damage. I sort of finally managed to get him to use a different attack, a stomp attack. I'm not sure how I managed that, but it gave me some more chance to hurt him. Despite how difficult it would be, I would recommend doing this boss solo. I think having too many players will just make it that he has an even higher health pool, and that'll also make coordinating and attacking him a bit more difficult. One other thing also is that this ancient dragon, he actually drops a giant soul. If you have 5 of them, that'll weaken. Well, the more you have, the weaker Vendrick will be. If you have all 5, then he is at his regular health. I definitely recommend that. As if you don't, Vendrick is incredibly resilient. But one thing that's also important is that after you have this Ashen Mist, you're able to dive into the Memories of Giants, as I previously said. You can also dive into the Memory of the King by going to the location where Vendrick's clothes are behind him. You can also go into the Memory of an Ancient Dragon by going back to that dragon that was killed by the Duke's dear Freya. And that will give you another boss soul for crafting weapons. I was really excited I beat that. So with this, I went to the DLC bosses. This is in the Crown of the Sunken King, and this is Alana the Squalid Queen. I'll have to find a lot of things to say because, as you'll see, even though I finished most of the main game, I still have a lot of footage, because this boss was definitely one of the most difficult for me, even though this was my first attempt. Alana's attacks hit very hard. She has many powerful spells and pyromancies, but the absolute most annoying thing is she can summon Velstad, another hard-hitting boss, to help her out. And he does poison damage. Like, that is you'll also see that despite the fact that I had aggroed Velstad away, my NPCs were doing almost 0 damage to her. Her AoE hits hard. It's not an easy fight. I don't know if it would have been easier solo because of the weakened health pool, but I don't necessarily want to have to fight both of them solo, which I ended up having to do for a good quarter of this boss fight. So, seeing as this is going to be a long fight, I'm going to have a lot of time to talk about the lore and the DLC. So, the important thing to note is that since this is the Scholar of the First Sin, I didn't have to pay extra for these DLCs. And that's definitely the way to experience Dark Souls 2 with all of these sort of equally contributing their part to the game. So, the idea is that Shulva, this lost city, was meant to basically worship the dragon Sin. And this invader and his soldiers, Sir Yorg, they came to conquer the city, and Sir Yorg stabbed Sin with his great spear, causing the dragon to spew out poison, which corrupted the inhabitants and destroyed the city. So Alana, the Squalid Queen, she somehow survived, and she sings to the dragon to keep him at bay, much like the Milfinito sing. So, as you'll see here, I conquered Velstad, and then I wanted to take my time because I didn't know how hard those magic attacks would hit. And as you'll see here, they hit really hard. And after about 5 seconds of rest, she summoned Velstad again. I nearly screamed out, "No fucking way." No fucking way. Are you kidding me? I was also out of Estus. Velstad was being incredibly aggressive because both my NPCs were dead. You'll see here he has way too good of tracking. Like if I didn't roll the last possible minute, he'd still hit me. Alana was spamming spells at me. This is why this fight is the longest one I have. Because several minutes of it were just me trying to get up to a decent health pool so that I could actually tank a few hits, and having Velstad run over and hit me. So, that is how I could define the difficulty of this fight based on whether or not she summons Velstad. Oh, it's such an evil experience. You'll actually see this doesn't have a proper ending, this fight, because I was so excited that I managed to win that I accidentally hit the save share button rather than hitting the options to go use a gesture at the end. Overall, one thing I can say about the Dark Souls 2 DLCs is that if I had played the game at the original time, and I did pay for the DLCs, I would be okay with that. They have a lot of sprawling level design, especially the Sunken City. It's quite a maze. There's this one area where you have to deal with these ghost enemies who you can only kill if you destroy their corpse. And the corpses, though, are located several rooms away behind some locked switches, and so you have to frantically run around flipping switches and dodging them. It was definitely a very intense experience. And again, I like how they all have their own contained lore that still relates to the story. There's a theme that many have identified Oh, you'll see there, she was about to summon skeletons as well. I would have thrown my controller if I had to deal with all of them. This is Sin, the slumbering dragon. But back to what I was saying. In this situation, the king was convinced by the queen to worship and protect this dragon. You'll see here he still has York's spear embedded in him. This dragon is a bit different from others in that he does have the ability to use poison clouds and do poison damage. One thing I'm not a fan of in this fight is that I'm not sure why. I guess it's because he's heavily armored, but your weapons degrade like twice as fast against him than any other enemy. And I didn't notice it this time. I never pay attention to my weapon degradation. You'll see, or you saw in my fight against Mytha, I completely didn't notice my club was at the risk of breaking until it told me. And so in this fight, I go through about like 3 or 4 different weapons because I normally don't have multiple weapons equipped at the same time. I try to keep my weight load as low as possible by only having one and a shield. And it was this fight that taught me I should always have room for a little extra. Now, I don't know if attacking Sin on his front by the spear does less weapon degradation. I didn't really experiment. But my highest recommendation is to equip the brass knuckle ring, I believe it is, as this will decrease weapon degradation. And I know it is possible at this point in the game, if you followed my path, to have a +1 or maybe even +2 version of it. Sin's moves are pretty telegraphed and predictable. It's just that they hit very hard, and if you're not very strict with healing, you could get caught off guard and lured into getting multi-hit. So you'll see I noticed my first weapon was breaking, so I decided to run away and leave the fight to the NPCs and quickly find the first weapon. Oh, that's right. I did have my flame longsword equipped, but I figured that using a flame weapon against a dragon would not be effective. Neither would a bow, where my only source of power was flame arrows. And you'll see here it's almost like insane at how fast my sword breaks. Like, just watch the weapon degradation. That's not fair. Or, I guess, I don't know. There was a change pointed out in Yahtzee's review that in Dark Souls 1 you did have to spend extra time using your souls to repair your weapons. You don't have to do that in Dark Souls 1. They auto-repair at every bonfire, but now they have 0 degradation. Everything breaks way too fast. I haven't played enough of Dark Souls 3 to know if the weapon degradation is any better. I realized I kind of screwed myself over because the only weapons I had besides that were the Smelter Demon Sword, which is flame damage, and this Poison Black Knight Great Axe, which wouldn't be useful against Sin. But thankfully, eventually, I was able to take him down. He's definitely one of the better dragon fights in the game. His damage is fair. His challenge is fun. I did co-op a lot of people on fighting this boss. One other important thing that I missed at the time, I mean, you can see it right there, is that there is a corpse with York's ring on it, implying that probably is is York, who died from the poison after he speared the dragon. But more importantly, of course, you will need to pick up the crown of the king. And with that, you will have the first DLC complete. The mandatory part. So each DLC area for Dark Souls 2, has a optional segment to it. And from my understanding, these areas were meant to be co-op. I believe, only going off of what I've heard, it is possible to place your summon sign in the gravestones outside the entrance to the DLC area, and then they will appear at the gravestones actually in the DLC area, which will allow you to help a player even if you don't have the DLC. So the unfortunate thing for that, though, is that it means that these areas and the boss fights, they're scaled for co-op. Obviously you'll see this fight is the Gank Squad, as it's unofficially known, is its 3 player-type enemies. Now there's this knight with bleeding katanas, there's Havel, for some reason, and there's a rapier and great bow user. On the bright side, at this point I was getting decent with the target shield parrying, so that definitely helped in the fight. But the only problem is that if you don't have any other players to help you out, then it's almost essential that you summon NPCs. Interestingly enough, the first 2 or 3 times that I died at this fight, I had both of the NPCs you have available. For this time I tried just speedrunning through, and one of them died instantly. I forget which one. So I did this not evenly matched, but it still managed to do it. I guess my main advice is get good at parrying and backstabbing. It really is effective on these. I didn't do it in this video, but parrying Havel is a very fun thing indeed. Yet for some reason I couldn't seem to parry this S-Stock Rapier user. Probably because he's an R1 spammer, like all those terrible PvP people. And that was my other problem, weapon degradation once again. I had to go with the Flame Longsword, my trusty backup that has never let me down, except when it has. There's not much lore to these guys. They're just simply invading this cave of the dead that there's supposed to be treasure in. And also be very careful for those rock monsters. They have statues on them similar to the ones from Black Gulch, but they will they will petrify you. And I found that out the hard way. But with persistence and aggression, these guys should go down, and they won't be robbing any more graves. So this brings us to the second DLC, the Crown of the Old Iron King. And this only has one mandatory boss, and that is the Fume Knight, who I was very worried about fighting because I know he's considered to be the hardest boss in Dark Souls 2. And the main reason being is if, one, you do not use the smelter wedges. So the lore behind this is that Nalia is her name. Bridal of Ash, if I recall correctly. Yes, Nadalia, Bride of Ash. she split her soul into many fragments and gave up her physical form, thus powering the Broom Tower. You will encounter her corpses in many areas of the level, and when you do, it will usually be giving a buff to the enemies in the area. There are 4 of them around this arena, and they allow the Fume Knight to heal. You need to make sure that you use your smelter wedges on these. You get 6 of them at the beginning, and you can find 4 of them in a chest in a secret area that you unlock after you get all of the machinery working again. The reason why the Fume Knight is very difficult is because his second stage, when he buffs his weapon, that AoE and the really slow swing attack does a ton of damage. You'll see when I get hit by them. So if you're not careful, it could potentially even be a 1 or 2 shot. So you must absolutely be careful. If you stand directly behind him, it makes dodging that attack easier. The AoE I recommend getting as far away from him and then simply running between the gap. Yeah, that did a lot of damage right there. The other interesting thing about the Fume Knight is that he's actually meant to be Raim, the other trusted knight of Vendrick that I talked about earlier. I guess, yeah, he became infatuated with Natalia, and he remains here to guard her regular main body, which you find frozen on a throne after you defeat him. Once again, contributing to the idea of the queen lustfully, or the king lustfully being controlled by the queen. I was really glad to beat that on my first try. Yes, the blue smelter demon. This is the co-op area for this DLC, and it definitely is meant to be co-op. The run up to this boss is terrible. There is a very long walkthrough. There are many, many enemies. They hit very hard, and a lot of them use ranged attacks, and they're up on ledges, so you can't get to them. NPC summons or co-op is a must. I'm not a fan of this boss because it is completely identical, almost in every way. I guess not completely identical, to the Fire Smelter Demon. This one simply does magic damage. His timing is a little bit different, but not so much that it threw me off. Really, the only reason I have NPC summons was to get through the actual level leading up to him. The other thing to watch out for is that when he does his first buff, it actually has an AoE. The original Smelter Demon didn't have that. You'll see there he even delays longer on that AoE. I can't really say too much about this as there's not much to talk about other than I decided to have a sense of poetic justice by using the Fire Smelter Demon sword against this one again. I thought it was clever. Overall, for the Smelter Demon, I guess the other thing I recommend is wait until the perfect opportunity to heal. Either if he's preoccupied with your summons or he's done the jump attack. He's incredibly aggressive and won't give you any chance to heal apart from those. One other thing that you can do is there is a shortcut leading up to the boss, and if you run through it, your NPCs won't be able to go with you, but they will eventually make their way around to the regular path, and usually they'll ignore most of the enemies. so if you do that, it's a bit of an easier way to get through. And next we come to a boss I actually had to look up how to get to, and it was because I missed a very obvious gate, and this is Suralone. This isn't a co-op recommended area. I did summon because there were options, and while there are a lot of alone nights leading up to this area, I think I probably should have done this fight solo to experience it properly. And the reason being is because I felt that this fight was a little too easy, simply because Suralone spent more time attacking the NPCs than he did me. And even when he did attack me, while his attacks did hit hard, I had plenty of times to heal. So I'm just going to look up some stuff about Suralone because I don't know too much myself. I believe that he also was in love with Natalia, perhaps. I'm not sure. It's that he has a smelter wedge sitting on a small chair in the next room after you defeat him. So, yeah. Oh, actually I'm just reading about this, is that he actually bows to you when you start the fight, and if you don't take any damage and you beat him, he'll commit seppuku. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Probably because I was being very unhonorable and going 3 against 1. That's not very fair. I think out of all the boss fights, this is one that I'll probably look most forward to replaying only solo. Another problem I have with Dark Souls 2 is that, in a way, you're almost forced to use NPC summons if you want to complete their quest lines. You never really had to do that in Dark Souls 1, at least not to the extent in Dark Souls 2. But at the same time, you also need to make sure you talk to the characters in certain areas, and then summon them, and then talk to them. It's a very weird pattern. I sort of got screwed over with Lucitile in this way, because I did summon her for the Lost Sinner, but then I missed her encounter in Earthen Peak. Therefore, I couldn't summon her for the Smelter Demon, and then that meant I couldn't summon her for like 3 other boss fights. So, this brings us to the last DLC, the Crown of the Ivory King. This is Ava, the King's Pet, a boss that I did not enjoy, but still enjoyed more than a certain other one we will get to eventually. Ava I found tough because she, he, it. Ava hits very hard, and I didn't really find a strategy that worked well for me. I tried using my strategy at the time, which had been fast swinging and rolling, but you'll see I couldn't really dodge the attacks. Before this, I actually tried tanking the damage by putting on Havel's armor and his shield, but then I couldn't raise the shield in time because the swings are very fast. So I sort of just went with it, I guess. Having NPC summons is definitely recommended. I tried soloing it first, but that didn't help. Perhaps it was that I was just not good at reading the tell of the boss and, reading the animations. I probably was too overeager. But the idea is that the Ivory King had 7 pets. We only encounter 3, though. And Ava is meant to guard the cathedral, which it does. And the other 2 that we encounter, Lud and Zolin, I believe. Yes, they are meant to perform mercy killings on the banished undead in the frozen outskirts, which I will have a lot to say about that when we get to it. So, I don't have too much else to say. I think an important thing is at the very beginning of the DLC, you can actually go to Ava right away, but it will be invisible. You need to progress through the level and find this one item. I forget what it's called. But there's a big throne and an NPC telling you don't take this, which of course means you will. Video game logic. And after you take this item, it allows you to see things you wouldn't normally see. So you can see Ava. This also means when you go back to the shaded ruins, you're actually able to properly see all of the ghosts. It's an interesting thing. I don't know. I didn't look it up if Ava was weak to fire or not. Maybe that's why I was doing little damage. My sword at this time was completely upgraded to +10. It's definitely a problem I had, that I would specifically give certain buffs to my weapons, but then not actually pay attention to whether or not that worked on the boss. For example, I did some co-op with the Fume Knight, and I didn't know that he was immune to both poison and bleed. I think that I definitely didn't help a lot in that situation. And this brings us to one of the most epic boss fights in Souls, the Burnt Ivory King. So, the first thing you'll want to do, though, is go through the rest of Ilium Lois to find the Lois Knights, as they will help you with this fight, because before the king even shows up, you have to fight his corrupted knights. That's the thing I like about this fight, is it's literally a war. It's a battle. The reason you'll need these Lois Knights is that eventually they will sacrifice themselves so that they can seal up these areas and prevent other knights from spawning in. And if you have all 4, you can still have one help you out. There's also a few NPC summons available. These knights can actually be difficult if you take them for granted. I'm not sure if they can be backstabbed, and they definitely don't stagger easily. I probably should have tried using my target shield and parrying them. I did that later on when I co-opted it with a few people, and that definitely helped. I don't know exactly how many knights it is you have to kill, but you'll see eventually that they stop showing up, and that the king eventually rears his ugly face. So, I guess I could rant a little about the lore. There is a lot to talk about. basically, his corrupt queen, or the queen that's corrupting him, was Alsana. And she is definitely part of a fragment of the soul of Manus, the father of the abyss from the DLC in Dark Souls 1. And basically, the king offered her protection by building this city as a fortress to guard against the old chaos, basically hell, and the creation when the Witch of Islith tried to light the first flame. So once again, we have that queen corrupting a king. The Burnt Ivory King's moveset is similar to the Pursuer's. So he's not too difficult to fight. You just have to watch out not to get greedy or get caught in a hard attack. Despite the fact that this was only like my second try, this is one of my favorite boss fights. It's just such a nice, epic battle. It's funny, he kind of spent more time fighting Twiggy than he actually did me. One thing that I definitely also like about the DLCs is if you play them in release date order, they definitely get better. Well, for the most part, as we will see with what is undoubtedly the most annoying boss in the game, and that is Lud and Zalin, the other king's pets. So, initially you start only fighting Lud, but eventually Zalin will fight. I don't know what the conditions are. I heard it was when Lud is down to 33% health, but you'll see Zalin almost jumped in right away. The area that leads up to this boss is an interesting idea, but it is executed terribly. And it's basically a frozen outskirts where there's an almost non-stop blizzard going on. So, you can't see like 2 feet in front of you. And anytime you're in the blizzard, you get attacked by these like reindeer beasts that, again, have way too good of tracking and do a ton of damage. I think actually I got like 2 shot by one of them once. This is the optional co-op area of the DLC, and it really shows because you can get up to 3 NPC summons. And I actually, the first time I got to this area, I went back and started it again so that I could have all 3. I think it was Abyss or Vengarl that had died on the way there. Yeah, I'm so glad I got this on one shot. I never looked forward. I never looked forward, and I never will look forward to this fight. It's a gank fight, and the run up to it sucks. It's such a far distance to run. The other thing I also literally just realized watching my footage is I don't know if there's a single boss, save for one, where I actually had a player player help me out and fight. I don't know, it may have just been that I was too high of a level for certain areas, that I farmed souls too much. But, yeah, kind of a shame. Thankfully, the NPC AI is very good in Dark Souls. So what just happened is that Zolan, when he gets really low on health, will buff himself and start healing. And this is annoying because you have to be crazy aggressive. It's almost impossible to kill him right now. So you basically have to just totally tank any damage, be completely aggressive, and attack until the healing wears off, and then you can finally down him. I personally don't know if I'm ever going to consider doing this boss solo. I might go insane. So, with the DLCs and the 3 crowns done, I then went and fought Vendrick. Now, I used a bright bug to make things easier, but you'll see here, and I am personally very proud of this. I beat Vendrick with no damage. It's actually interesting. I was preparing myself for hours and hours of insanity and grinding, but this might be one of the easiest bosses I fought in the game. I don't know if it's because I had mentally prepared myself, or if I'd gotten good at dodging, or the fact that I used a bright bug. But I found his attacks, as long as I stood to his left side, easy to dodge. I also recommend getting all of the giant souls, as then Vendrick will have his normal health rather than a buff 32 times his normal amount. This story is definitely a very sad one, and I think his lore is represented perfectly. And yes, the Dark Lurker, a boss I was terrified of. So, you have to go through 3 chasms of the dark after talking to Darkgiver Grandel, the guy in the wheelchair, I believe. And when you get through the 3rd one, you will then get to fight the Dark Lurker, who is an insanely difficult optional boss. All of his attacks are magic-based, so you need to have a high magic shield. And all of his attacks hit incredibly hard. You'll see the sword attack he uses. You could potentially get 3-shotted by it. He also has this weird attack where he sends that blast through a portal, and it hits you from a way you weren't looking at. But the scariest part of Dark Lurker is that at low health, he or she duplicates itself. Fun fact, so this is my 2nd attempt, and the first attempt I think I died in about 30 seconds. I got hit by all 3 of those fireballs, and yeah, not fun. I've heard that if you use pyromancy, this fight is a joke because the Dark Lurker is weak to fire. However, I didn't. I only had enough attunement for 1 slot, and that was so I could just use warmth to heal up before bosses without wasting an Estus or life gem. So, my best strategy for this, if you're not magic, is to run. Run as fast as you can, get 1 tiny little hit in, and then run some more. I could see this boss being annoying on a higher difficulty, like New Game Plus or something. But thankfully, he doesn't have too much health. I think this might have been the most excited I was after beating a boss. I can't think off the top of my head which one took me the most tries, but this and Belfry Gargoyles I was proud to get right away. The other thing I should mention, oh yes, so I accidentally screwed up when trying to save the footage for fighting Nashandra. I thought I was able to get her and Aldia down in one go, but I actually died like at the very, very end of fighting Aldia, and I forgot to save the footage. I went and fought Aldia again, defeated him, and then realized that. So what I did was just simply get some co-op footage fighting Nashandra, so there still could be footage of her. Apologies for it not being my playthrough, but that footage doesn't exist. Alright, what I had to say is that these orbs you see around will constantly curse you and drain your health. However, if you have all 3 of the DLC crowns and Vendrick's crown, if you talk to him in the memory, he will give you his blessing. This means that as long as you wear the crown, you will not go hollow when you die, and your health will not decrease from dying. That is amazing because it means you no longer need human effigies. But unfortunately, this effect doesn't carry into New Game Plus. Still, it is good because it means while your health will still decrease from fighting Nashandra, if you're near the orbs, your maximum health will not decrease. Keep in mind at this point, my character, I had already beaten the game and leveled up a lot more, so I was definitely a little more overpowered. And Nashandra is a very easy fight, but I know that the lore explanation has been because she always was weak, and that's why she needed someone else to defeat Vendrick. So, now, this is my footage of fighting Aldia. I died once to him, and therefore I had to re-enter the fog gate with my NPCs, although I wouldn't recommend bringing NPCs to this fight, as he has a very high health, and the thing is that these NPCs will just rush and charge him. Thing is, if you attack him while this fire is up, for 1, you won't do as much damage, and 2, you'll take a lot of damage. And the problem you'll see is that these NPCs just sort of go at it. What I was trying to do here was use poison arrows on Aldia, but I don't know if he actually can be poisoned or not. Again, I didn't look that up. Most of his attacks are pretty easy to dodge. The biggest difficulty is taking too much damage from the fire, which is why I was using Flash Sweat, or getting too greedy. The main attack you need to watch out for is this large fireball attack. You saw that he used that at the beginning. And that pretty much can one-shot you. It's how I died. It's really annoying because I always want to charge him when he does that attack, since he puts his fire defense down. But at the same time, if you do that, you leave yourself at the risk of getting KO'd from that attack. It's also important to watch for that AoE when he spawns in. So, I'm almost shocked at how Aldia was not an essential part of vanilla Dark Souls. So Aldia, I believe, is the brother of Vendrick, and he was trying to help the king by experimenting on a way to find a cure for the undead curse. But at the same time, of course, he was using it for his own gain. Aldia understands the cyclical idea of fire and dark. See, the way it works in Dark Souls is that pretty much each one takes place at the end of the Age of Fire and Light, thus giving the Chosen Undead a choice to either link the flame, continuing the Age of Fire, or forever plunging the world into darkness, at least until another Chosen Undead can rise and begin a cycle of flame. The idea is that Drangleic is simply Lord Dran in the future, in another dying Age of Fire. I love Yahtzee's joke about that the choice of fire and dark, either, allowing some more light to happen, or just bringing on the inevitable, is a choice between a Trump and Clinton presidency. Although, to be fair, this video is probably going to come out right around that election, so now that joke is very untopical. Oh well. But, yeah, this is another example of why in Dark Souls you can't be greedy. I could have killed him there, but I don't want to risk getting hit by that. I'd rather, well, yeah, easy right there. If I had been greedy and that had fully hit me, I would have been one-shotted. But, yeah, the trick is just persevere and you'll down Aldia. And that is all of the bosses for Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. From here, you actually have a choice. I didn't realize this at the time. I knew in the original game you couldn't choose, but in Scholar of the First Sin you can. You can choose to ascend the throne in the kiln or leave. But regardless of that, even if I had known, my choice would have still been to ascend the throne. It always seems like the right thing to do, allow the cycle to continue, because even if you break the cycle, you don't really do that, They'll just say, oh, eventually some other undead from another time came and fixed it because time is distorted in Lord Dran or Drangleic or Lothric, wherever you may be, or Yharnam. So, now that you've attained the Giant's kinship, this allows you to control the golems, thus forming the path to the throne. So, my closing thoughts. Dark Souls 2 is incredibly fun, incredibly enjoyable. There are so many moments to it I love. There are many, many great bosses. But just overall, it isn't as cohesive and polished of a game as Dark Souls 1 is. Many people have pointed out things like the level design or the lore not matching up as well as Dark Souls 1. Personally, what I've mentioned many times, that the idea of the enemies having way too perfect of tracking really detracts from the fairness of the game. But despite the fact that I have complaints about it, it's not as good. I'll still play through it many times. Oh, I guess at this point maybe I should mention that I jokingly created a really ugly character because I didn't think you would ever see her face. And then I found out about this crown and blessing, so, yeah. But, if any of you managed to make it through this, awesome. Thanks for watching. I hope to have some more videos soon. Maybe I'll do one for Dark Souls 3. Eventually. Thanks for watching.